Hi, right, Nick Laves back on one of these videos. I didn't want to do it today because I want to get my hair cut first, but unfortunately the team here decided that I had to do it, so you're going to have me looking very shaggy, which unfortunately is the case. Never mind. Anyway, today we are going to talk a little bit about newsjacking. So, in the past, in the PR kind of stuff, we've talked about press releases, and articles along that line, which are quite long form articles, going to take a long time to write them and distribute them to various media outlets and all that kind of thing. And it's a fairly long process, or it can be a long process. What we're going to look at today is maybe a little bit of a quicker way of getting your name in the media, getting your company's name in the media, and starting to influence the media agenda. And the way to do that is by newsjacking. Now, what is newsjacking? Well, newsjacking is kind of getting your two penneth into the stories that are already out there, and maybe even influencing how they're going to go. So, we live in a 24-hour news society now. There's a rolling agenda of news, constantly wanting stories to be updated. Journalists are constantly looking for new angles for stories, for fresh angles for stories. Stories run and run and run. And journalists every day have to find a new angle to a particular story. I mean, if you look, for example, the big story of the day at the moment, apart from the terrible weather, is the Tory leadership election. We're down to two candidates for that. It's dominating the news agenda. Journalists that are working on this, they've got to find a new angle. They've got to find an angle which is probably different to what somebody else is doing. We've got a lot of different news outlets at the moment. They're all competing for a good story, and they're all looking for new angles. And this is where you might be able to come in. If you've got something that's interesting to say, if you've got something that's relevant to say, you want to get those opinions out there, get them to the media. And this is really what newsjacking is. It's just about, seeing what's going on in the news, finding something relevant to say and getting it out there. So the first thing to consider if you're going to try newsjacking is, are you a qualified person to speak about what it is you want to say? There's no point you starting to talk about things which don't necessarily relate to your profession and a capacity in which you're qualified and credible to talk about these things. If your opinion is based on your experience in work, your professional environment, then absolutely that's great. Go ahead, because that makes you qualified to talk about it. However, not only that, you've got to make sure that when you do talk to the media in this capacity, you're showing a level of expertise. You want to think things that are original thoughts, things that are not just regurgitated from something else, something that's new that hasn't been on the news before. Because if you do that, then it's likely to be interesting. But if it's a regurgitated opinion, or if it's just a construct or a conflagration of other opinions or things that you've already heard that have been in the media, chances are you're not going to get much notice taken of that. So how do you get this information out there? Once you've decided you're a credible person to comment on a particular story, and once you've decided what it is you want to say about this, well, you need to work with your PR team to condense these into sort of key messages and statements that you can start to get out there to the media. So, work with your PR teams to identify the journalists which are writing about the types of things that you want to talk about, and start to get these statements out there. And what you'll start to find is, hopefully they'll be used in stories as a piece of expert comment, piece of analysis, whatever that might be, a useful quote. You'll start then to build some awareness of yourself as an individual and your company in relation to the important stories of the day. Now, what you will find over time, if you do this regularly, start to do this on a fairly regular basis, and come up with some useful, credible and interesting things to say, is that journalists will soon start to learn that you are a useful source of information on a range of topics. And what they might well do then, or what they hope to do, is to start to get in touch with you. They know you've got something to say, they know you're reliable, and that's really what journalists want. They want reliable people in their contacts books that they can ring up at a fairly short notice and get a good comment on. And if you start to do these things and start to do this newsjacking, you'll start to become that person to them. So what you're going to find then, or what you may find, is that they will start to ring you and they'll want quotes off the cuff, which is a really great position to be in, because if you can supply those, they'll come back to you time and time again. What you need to do in that circumstance is start to learn to give some interesting sound bites, some fairly short, sort of media-friendly statements that are going to look great in print and even on the broadcast media, that really demonstrate you know what you're talking about. What you don't want to do is kind of drag on and get a bit boring and overemphasize points and repeat the same thing and just sort of go on and on and on, because that will turn the journalists off as well. They might think, okay, well, this guy's not necessarily who we thought he was or as useful as he thought he was. So try to be concise with what you want to say, because that always gives the best quotes. So when you get to that stage and you've got journalists sort of ringing you up and coming to you, what you will eventually become is a good trusted source to journalists. You'll be somebody who they will regard as an expert in your particular field. You'll start to get quoted more and more, and that's going to do great things for your personal branding, you know, for your awareness amongst key client groups, and also for how you're perceived in terms of the opinions that you give and the insight that you have, and essentially how professional you are in your role, which is a really great place to be, and it can do, you know, only do wonders for the company that you run or work for or represent, or the organisation you represent. So that is a really quick run through newsjacking. It's something you can get started on straight away. All you really need to do is watch the news and decide how you can comment and give some original thought into that. And as I say, work with your PR teams, start to get those quotes out there, and you'll be amazed how quickly that builds and how quickly journalists start to come to you for really, really good insight. I hope you enjoyed that, hope that was useful, and I will see you on the next video.